Modern Dadhood. Modern Dadhood podcast.
Here we are, friend. Oh man, I was coming in hot.
You want to adjust your levels and try it again?
Here we are, friend. Hey, it's good to see your face, pal. What's going on?
I'm good. Life is busy, and I'm good.
You're supposed to say better now.
Better now that I can see you. We can see each other. Our friends listening can't see us.
Well, then we should introduce the show so they know what the heck is going on. This is Modern Dadhood, an ongoing conversation about the joys, challenges, and general insanity of being a dad in this moment. I think this is some of that general insanity.
Yeah.
That's what I think is going on.
Tonight, you mean?
Right now.
Yeah.
This moment.
For sure. Who are you, man?
Well, my name is Mark, and I'm a dad to twin boy 5-year-olds. You?
My name's Adam Flaherty, and my two daughters are 9 and 6.
Man.
I know, man. I'm going to do that quick thing, Mark, where
It's going to be so quick.
Where we say, for dads and moms listening, whether you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher, Spotify, Pocket Casts, wherever you listen, please give Modern Dadhood a quick rating, a quick review, and subscribe if you haven't. And please tell a friend about the show. One friend, even one friend, makes a difference.
We have a very exciting thing happening in this episode. I'm just double checking. This is a first for Modern Dadhood.
Right.
What's happening
That's right.
here? We are having a guest come back. This is their second time on the show. And of course, it's an absolutely wonderful guest.
A great human being.
A fantastic human being.
And now a friend to the show.
Who goes by the name
of Chris Gethard, of course. Chris Gethard's coming back on the show to talk about his new book called The Lonely Dad Conversations.
And we'll invite Chris Gethard into the conversation in just a moment.
Well, what's up?
You and I haven't chatted for a couple weeks. And you know what I was thinking? Here's what I was thinking. To keep things short, keep things sweet, but to give ourselves the opportunity to catch up, and of course, to give our listeners the opportunity to hear what's been going on in our lives, I had a little idea. What if you and I, and you go first, okay? I want you to describe how your life has been over the last couple weeks in 5 words. Can you do it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We were texting about this earlier. You bounced this idea.
Man, look, you're giving it away.
The reason that I'm saying is because I need to provide a little context, because when you suggested it, I was like, that's a cool idea. And then I got thinking about it, how I would approach this. And I was like, I wonder if Mark's going to do like 5 different adjectives that sort
like
of
word, period,
exactly.
word, period. Yeah, I got you.
Or if you were going to form a statement. And mine just kind of came to me naturally as a statement.
Oh, let's have it.
All right. 5 words for how things are going right now.
Mm-hmm.
Life is going really fast.
Ooh.
That's mine. It's just going really fast. I feel like my kids are getting really big. Like they're changing a lot. We got a vacation coming up, and I just feel like I got a lot to do in a very short amount of time. It's just coming very quickly. I don't know. Lots of things are developing, and it's look, there's some very exciting parts of it. There's some very overwhelming parts of it. It just feels like things are moving. Things are moving a little fast.
Yeah. I know what you, I know that feeling.
What, give me your 5.
Here's mine. Mine came out as a sentence also.
Oh,
Ready?
good. Okay.
COVID the second time sucks.
I only just learned before we started recording that you had COVID a second. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. No, I mean, it could have been worse, but it was a real bummer. But kind of similar to what you're talking about there. It's like you spend a day or two kind of in bed.
Yep.
In a fog, and life is still just, the kids don't stop.
Right.
work doesn't exactly stop. I try to take a little bit of time off, but you got to try to shake it off and get back into it. But it was 2 days of on the couch watching bad movies, but it kind of also felt like a lifetime. When I tried to get back into the swing of things. I was like, all right, what's going on everywhere in every aspect of my life? All right, what's going on? What did I miss? And how on earth am I going to catch up? It's kind of how I still feel. And I've been on the mend now for 4 or 5 solid days.
Yeah. In some ways, it feels like the last 3 years have been some sort of strange time warp. But when you actually are sick and you're in bed and life is still happening out there around you, but you know, it's a completely different experience of like losing your sense of time.
Yeah. I did allow myself the great joy of just right in the middle of the afternoon, I watched Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Oh yeah.
What a great movie.
Oh, we should, that was a fun exercise, by the way. The five words, the 5-word catch up was cool. I liked the idea.
I liked it. I'm glad you liked it.
All right, Chris Gethard's going to drop in just a couple minutes. Mark, I know that you and I have both been reading his new scribd original book, The Lonely Dad Conversations. I've been really enjoying it. What's your sort of take on it? How have you been liking it?
It's funny, it's insightful, and it's thought-provoking.
It's sort of everything you expect from Chris Gethard, right?
Yeah. It's all, yeah.
He's naturally hilarious. He surrounds himself with really funny people, but also he gets pretty deep. Like he's not afraid to be vulnerable and to really get into it.
About the book, it's a series of interviews. He gathered a gaggle of friends and acquaintances, and he sat down and he just interviewed them, and they go places. A lot of the interviews are pretty revealing, which is interesting and also, comforting as well. You know what? I think we should just let Chris join the conversation.
Let's bring him in. Chris Gethard is our first returning guest on Modern Dadhood. He's a hilarious, multi-talented dude with too many impressive credentials to rattle off here. But at present time, he's active with the awesome podcast Beautiful Anonymous and New Jersey is the World. He's about to film his upcoming special, The Father and the Son, which I'm sure we'll be seeing on streaming very soon. And he's joining us once again on Modern Dadhood to chat about his new scribd original book, The Lonely Dad Conversations. Chris, it's awesome to see you. Awesome to have you back.
It's great to be back. Thanks so much for having me.
It's good to see your face. And I just need to tell you, so since the last time we spoke, which was, I don't know, like a year, maybe a year and a half ago. So I had been wanting to check out Don't Think Twice after hearing you and Mike Birbiglia talk about it on his podcast a while back. We finally watched it, and man, what a good film.
Thanks. Yeah, it was really fun. It was also weird for me because the premise of that movie, for anybody who hasn't seen it, is what if you were on an improv team and one of your castmates got cast on SNL? And it was very strange for me to act in that film because that did happen. I was on a team at UCB when Bobby Moynihan got cast on SNL.
Okay. All right.
So for me, it wasn't a stretch. The acting in that movie wasn't a stretch. Now, I want to be clear because some people have said to me like, oh, that's the story of what happened when Bobby got it. And I go, no, I mean, there's elements of it in there. Mike gave me a little creative consultant credit on the film. And some of it was because I had lived through something similar and we were able to hash it out. But Bobby and I were never punching each other in the face or screaming at each other or all that stuff. Like Bobby and I remain really great friends to this day. So I'm glad you liked the film. And yeah, for me, I think back and I go, what a weird thing to kind of reenact a stretch of my life. But yeah, those feelings of watching your friends achieve great success while you kind of wonder where you're going to end up. They are all too familiar to me. Yeah.
But yeah, it was
reality.
It was a great film. But how have things been going since we last caught up? How's Cal doing? How's your family?
Ups and downs, as I think all of us would say, if I'm being truly honest, ups and downs. Cal is great. Sweet little guy, funny little guy. makes me laugh every day. He's about to turn 4.
Wow, man.
So he's potty trained, can't wipe his own butt yet, but he can do everything else himself.
Get there.
It's really a great development, the potty training. He's cool. He pretends he doesn't like school, and then his teachers tell us when he actually gets through the door that he loves it. His school is like 2.5 hours a day.
Okay.
So I don't know how much that means, but he loves to tell me how much he hates school, and his teacher's like, he's the best kid. Don't believe him. He really responds well. So he's good. He's a good boy. Makes me laugh. How about you guys? How are you?
Ups and downs. No, yeah. I mean, so my kids just turned 5 recently, and yeah, it's tumultuous. Like a lot of the time. I was just telling Adam earlier, this scenario that happened tonight happens all the time. They got home from school. They were both exhausted. The transition from home to school is always a rocky one. And they were here for minutes before one of them picked up something and threw it at the head of the other one.
Great.
Yeah, but but the one who got the thing thrown at them was kind of being a jerk right before that. So, but then now he's hit in the head and he's putting on this performance.
Yeah, he's a victim now.
Yeah, where he's dropping to his knees and he's screaming bloody murder and the other one's running away. And these things happen so fast, and my wife and I are sometimes just left looking at each other like, which one of these kids do we talk to first? Like which one of them do we pull aside? Do we let it go? There's dinner on the stove burning. There's just all too often we're in this sort of like moment where we're like, neither of us know what to do right now. That's life right now for me.
I hear you.
Yeah,
I hear you.
And my girls are 9 and 6, and it's awesome. It's constantly a lot of like big emotions, and for the last like 2 or 3 weeks, I don't know if it's the same with you guys, but it's just been like illness after illness. So like constant coughing and sniffling just when I feel like we're getting past it. Like my 6-year-old daughter spent the day throwing up today. So I was like,
oh no, dude.
It's just one thing after another, but we'll get through it. So let's get into talking about the book, the reason that you're here. I feel like a lot of your writing lately, your performing lately, it seems to really prominently feature this fatherhood theme for obvious reasons. Like it's a very important, a big part of your life. But what are you sort of enjoying about that theme being so prominent in your work lately? And how are people kind of responding to that?
People are responding well, although I do have some insecurities about the fact that I was like a very hipster, relevant in Brooklyn for many years. New York press would consistently say that I was cutting edge for years. And now I'm doing something that's very much a trope, which is a comedian has a kid and here comes the kid material. But it's, if I'm going to write from a place of honesty, it's what it's going to be about right now, because it's like my whole life hit this brick wall called fatherhood. And it's a very happy brick wall to hit, but it's a brick wall, all the momentum of everything else stops and at best revolves around it now. So it is what it is. One of the things that's creatively been very compelling to me that shows up a little bit in the Lonely Dad conversations, shows up even more in the stand-up, is understanding my own father a lot more than I ever have. Some things that didn't make sense when they were happening to me, or things that maybe caused me some questioning or anxiety or stress that I look back on now and I go, how weird to be 39 when my son was born and all of a sudden go, wait, I completely get these things that seemed baffling to me 35 years ago, 25 years ago. I get it now. Oh my goodness, that's what it was. He was scared or nervous or flying by the seat of his pants. And how could you ever know that until you're also living it? So that's a side of things that I think is maybe a little less cliche. I think as someone who's like perpetually always felt a little bit like an introvert and lonely, I think a lot of my work over the years is clearly, you look at Beautiful Anonymous, it's me having phone calls with other people. It's me just basically trying to make friends. Like my old public access show that turned into a cable show we took phone calls all the time, and I was just constantly like, if I feel weird, if you're weird, call and we could be weirdos together. So the TLDR, it's like fatherhood infects my work. And within it, I do try to find some angles that other people maybe haven't beaten to death before, and always trying to look for the deeper cut with all my work, to just go, what's the stuff other people aren't thinking about? What's the take on it that other people haven't gotten to yet, that other people wouldn't see?
I mean, just out of curiosity, like, I'm assuming you've got a fan base that has some younger folks in it that maybe are not parents yet. And I wonder how they're kind of reacting to some of this material. Do you ever kind of get feedback, like, from that section, you know, from that part of the audience? Like, are they connecting with it, like maybe in their own way? Or you ever talk to fans about that?
It's a really great question, and it's a really astute observation. And, you know, I've come to realize culturally, my whole life, it was always like, even growing up, I was always the little kid tagging along with my brother and the older kids, and simultaneously the oldest kid amongst people younger than me. I've always walked that line. My work kind of walks that same line, where it's perpetually been, I look back at my old public access show and I was the guy who was 31 and there were 22-year-olds watching it, really identifying with. Beautiful Anonymous started when I was 37 and there were 45-year-olds who were really into it. And now I'm about to turn 43 and they're in their 50s and they really like it. So I've never totally managed to find a fan base that's exactly my age. It's always, they're a little younger than me looking at me from one direction, or a little older looking at the other. And I've had many frustrated agents who have said, like, if we could just put all the people who like your separate things together, you'd have a really great, reliable fan base. And I will say, some of the younger people who knew me as like the wild public access experimental guy, they have moved on with their lives. They're not here yet. They're 29, they're 30 now. They're doing Molly and staying up all night in Brooklyn and doing the things you do when you're 29. And I'm an old guy to them now, and I'm lamer and cheesier, but I do have great confidence that in 5 years, they're going to find my more recent work and they're going to go, oh, okay, now we really get it. Now we really get it.
And that's going to be great, because the work that you're putting out, and Lonely Dad Conversations, by the way, is so great. And this is what I look forward to for the people who are maybe right now staying up late and doing Molly, but will hopefully find this in 5 years. It's like, it's a real, honest, open look from a bunch of dudes talking about being dads, which is the thing that doesn't exist enough out there in the world. There's plenty of books of, like, I have a bunch of them on the shelf right back here, of like, whatever, this is the best way to talk to a toddler. This is,
make sure you know how to swaddle your baby.
Yeah, here's how to potty train.
Right.
There's a lot of those.
Tons of those books, but this, like, a book that you can open up and dive right into what is just a conversation between two people trying to figure things out and talk about things like feelings and emotions. I just don't think happens as much. So I really hope that these people eventually put the Molly down for a few minutes in the future and check it out.
And I'm glad you liked it. It's very nice, everything you just said. I also want to make sure people listening there know I didn't anticipate this one being what it was. And I was actually really excited about it, because some of these people are other people who come from comedy and entertainment. Some of these people are people who just live down the block from me. Some are people I grew up with. They're from many different walks of my life. And the thing that was really exciting when I was writing the book was how many of them started bringing things up, even though they've never met and even though they're extremely different people. That's when I started to realize, oh, like, we are in the middle of a huge cultural shift right now. And a lot of that cultural shift is looking at things like, you know, does masculinity mean the same thing as it did in the 80s, in the 90s, in the, you know, let alone in the 50s, when the sitcom dad kind of like set the tone for everything after. For a lot of us who consider ourselves sort of sane, rational people who go, I don't want to have to be like a tough guy, emotionally distant dad. I want to tell my kid I love them. I want that, like, okay, but how do you do it? Because it's not really been the standard for most of us up until right now. So we are sort of right now, those of us with youngins, kind of the first wave of dads who have to go like, well, if we unwrap all that Cold War rhetoric and if we start trying to figure out how to let that go, that's great. But what do you do instead? Because there hasn't totally been an example up until now. And I realized there's a lot of guys struggling with it, you know, whether that's other artist friends of mine or whether that's just other dudes from Jersey. There's a lot of people going, yes, it's kind of messing with my head and I don't totally know what the expectations are. So
what's interesting about what you just said, Chris, is that we all sort of grew up, the three of us anyway, in the same time period. And yeah, so maybe our parents didn't, you know, shower us with love. It wasn't, and we didn't, you know, openly talk about our feelings and things like that. And we weren't having like direct conversations the way we do, but like we weren't taught to do that with our kids. I feel like it just is sort of instinctual. So like what I wonder is, you know, where does that come from? If I wasn't taught to approach my daughter when she's crying about something and sit her down and say, like, let's just talk about it. Like, it's all right to cry, like, have your feelings and, you know, talk to me about it. Like, if that wasn't my experience, then why intrinsically do I do that with my own kids?
Yeah, it's a huge question, right? And it's probably some massive mix of we're all rejecting the hustle culture. Like, we all saw the damage of that and don't want to buy into it. You know, I'm sure the pandemic has accelerated it in so many ways, even weird cultural shifts. Like he produced a special of mine. He's been a mentor to mine, but like you can look at Judd Apatow movies and start to see when it was like, oh, these movies are, you know, now we forget, like, this is men letting their guard down. This guy's 40 talking with other male friends about being a virgin. Ha, 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 ha. Men talking about feelings. That felt like this huge shift in pop culture, just to have like a movie where men let their guard down. That was like not that long ago, you know? So it's been bubbling to the surface, and I wish I was smart enough to be able to say why. But I mostly just feel the whiplash of having been through it. I mean, even when you look at, I don't know about you guys, but I'm 42 years old, and I think back, I get so sad because I go, man, there are kids I went to high school with who have come out since high school, but there wasn't one. When I tell you there wasn't one kid I remember who was actually out of the closet in all 4 years of high school, I'm not exaggerating.
I think it's the same with me. I think it's...
And I sit here, that's a thought we can't fathom. A high school kid today could not fathom that. And look, we have a long way to go. Yeah. I'm not trying to sit here with two other white guys and talk about how great the world is now. There's a long way to go. We all know it. But some of the barriers that have come down between our school experience and our kids they moved at light speed in a really great way. But it does feel a little bit like we're all sort of standing in the rubble of what was, trying to figure out how to raise kids in this better world that we haven't totally nailed down the parameters of yet.
Right. Yeah. Like the one thing that we don't know is what our kids, how they're going to take all of these experiences. And then when they become parents, turn around and look at their kids and how are they going to process? You know, you'd like to think it's positive because we're here talking about trying to be positive and open and talking about, you know, feelings and being present, you know, but we don't really know, you know, how this experiment is going to sort of end up until that crew sort of gets there and then goes through that scenario that we're talking about. You know,
I was just going to say you have a really great quote in the book specifically about that, on like how the role of the father has evolved and is constantly evolving. And you say of the dads of our parents' generation, you say, I don't fault them. They did their best, but it's on modern day dads to adjust the levels of all these things to do something that feels more fitting for our kids in the world they're growing up in. And of course, our kids are someday going to have to unwrap all the nonsense we hand to them, which I think, Mark, is sort of what you just kind of summarized.
Yeah. Like it's going to be sad to realize, man, we're putting in all this work and we're all like so active right now. Like we got to shift things and make this better. And they are just going to turn around when they're all shitty 15-year-olds and be like, fuck you.
They will want nothing to do with us.
Yeah. And they're all going to go to therapy and talk about us and the ways we messed up. Like, it's inevitable, but at least they can go to therapy. Like that's there's another thing we didn't talk about back in the day. At least now we can joke about them going to therapy. So that's progress, I guess. We can at least joke about how they'll, be complaining about us in therapy instead of all of us ignoring therapy in general. Who knows? Is that progress?
I think it's progress. It's funny. I mean, this is just anecdotal, but like I kind of credit my ability to be open emotionally with friends and my wife and my family and kids and stuff because I went through a traumatic experience. I had a traumatic situation that happened when I was 15 years old. And long story short, I ended up going to therapy for a little while.
Do I know about this? I've known you for a long time, Mark, and I don't know what you're talking about.
It is very mysterious.
Yeah. I'm only being mysterious because I don't want to take us down a whole path. But I murdered someone. No, it was not. No, my brother's accident. But so I have a brother that's in a wheelchair, but in 1998 he was abled before that. He had an accident and became disabled. And then we were kind of thrust into this situation where we needed to figure out how to communicate with one another. And as a byproduct, I ended up going to therapy, and that just opened me up. It just gave way to this like, oh, you can talk about these things and feel better. Just that connection, to me is just something that completely changed the course of my life. So,
and first of all, that's a sad story, and I'm so sorry. And I will say culturally, it is just, there's also something to point out of like, oh, in the late 90s, you had a reason that was very definitive and people weren't going to judge or make fun of the fact that you weren't there. Everybody was going to go, of course, right. And that was a barrier that I think a lot of us felt. And I don't think moving forward, that's going to be nearly as much of a thing at all. One would hope.
Yeah, I would hope so. So one of the first things that jumped out to me, there were so many great nuggets that sort of jumped out and were really thought provoking, but there was a story with a person whose name is Keith. In my notes, I wrote party guy in parentheses.
Yeah. He loved partying. Really did legitimately love staying out late.
I can't even, it makes me tired to even think about. And when I was reading that section, I started to think of how important it is that you have to have something that's yours that you love, that you can try to continue in some way, shape or form, right? Something that's not kids, something that's not work. And yes, especially towards the beginning, right? You have to put your own needs to the side. There's just the logistics don't even allow for it when you first get home from the hospital and you're trying to keep this thing alive for the first year of its life and you're completely exhausted and it's hard to have a hobby at that time, you know. But I think it's really important. I think it's really important to get back to something like that, because I think I started thinking like if you lose a sense of yourself along the way, I think ultimately in the long run, you're just going to have that much harder of a time taking care of your kids. How does that strike you? What's your take on that?
I think it's really true, and I think until you can get back to some of those things that give you a sense of self, like how is your household going to feel like it has a firm foundation, right? Like it just, that's that uphill climb phase. I think I remember at one point having like a real bad night where I look back and I'm so embarrassed, where I got so sad that I didn't get to go see an Avengers movie. Because I've loved Marvel Comics. I've loved Marvel Comics since I was 7 years old. And I used to go and see them all. I was like, I'm not going to see Avengers at the theater. And my wife had to break it down and just be like, no, of course not. I don't have time to go see a 3-hour movie right now. Like he was like 2 or 3 months old. And you realize, but if you can't get back to that, then you're just, it's not a well-rounded situation. And how is that good for a kid, right? At some point, you got to be able to just get a babysitter and go see Ant-Man. Got to see it. And that's right? Like, that's the type of thing of like, I used to be there on opening night. It's like, not anymore.
Right.
That's for less tired people. That's for less tired people who organize their own schedules.
Matinee just doesn't have the same kind of cool sort of ring to it as opening night.
Those days are done. But you find that middle ground, right? I hope.
You and your friend Greg had this fascinating exchange about how becoming a dad made him start contemplating his own death a lot.
Yeah. That one blew my mind. I'm glad that one jumped out. Well, that one
jumped out at me because I could relate to that one. It wasn't like the moment I became a dad, I started, thinking that the clock was ticking, but something about having kids just put the rest of my life into some kind of perspective. And it made me think about the choices I made in terms of like when I do go out and do things separate from my family that are just like to preserve my sense of self. It's hard to explain. And it is a combination of the sort of selfish part of I don't want to die, because I want to watch my kids grow up and, share in this sort of like loving and fun experience and the adventures. But it's also, I don't want to die because I want to be able to support my family and help provide for my kids and for them to have a dad. I wonder, reading it in text, it's not the same as being there in person. When you were talking to Greg about this stuff, you said it blew your mind. Can you talk to us about that a little bit?
Well, one of the things that's important for anybody listening to this, certainly I'm sure a lot of the people who listen are parents, and they will understand this, is he wasn't morose and he wasn't melancholy. He was like, a lot of the book was me going to different friends and just saying like, I felt this weird thing that was akin to loneliness. Did you feel it? And his response was like, it wasn't loneliness for me. He's like, I know what you felt. For me, I just started really dwelling on death. But he wasn't saying it like with fear. You immediately have this feeling that there's more of a purpose now, and it doesn't extend just to you. And like, you start to realize like life isn't a 100-meter dash. It's a relay race. And like, someone passed you a baton and you get to pass someone else the baton now. And it's this long, lengthy, cyclical thing. And it ends. And there was someone who passed my dad the baton that I only knew as my grandfather, who was like an elderly man. And he was a baby once. And now I see a baby. And then there were people before him, so many people as these things split that just kept passing each other the baton. And you get this sense of like, oh, I'm linked in with this thing that has more to do with time and space than I ever knew. And I totally understood what he meant of like, you start to think about your own death, but in a way where it's kind of like exciting. Not like you want death, but where you're like, the idea of the end has a different context now. And it makes me laugh to think about how it ends. And it makes me excited to think about how it kind of doesn't end because this person's here now.
Yeah. You sort of have to like strip away the emotion of it and think of how devastating it is when you lose somebody you care about, and more look at it as like, I don't know, you almost want to look at it from like, objectively from, I don't know. It's hard to wrap your head around it,
Yeah, but the stuff with Greg and death, I remember that. I was actually one of the early moments where I was like, oh, there's way more to this idea of these interviews than I thought, because I thought it was really fascinating.
The measurement of time thing, that's what started to hit me. I never, before kids, I never really thought about my time on the planet. I always just understood that I was this very small, ultimately incredibly insignificant little thing in this very big world on this very long time scale, and I just, so like, whatever, make the most of what you've got. And then after kids, slowly though, I started feeling that time was going by. I guess the only way I can sort of explain it. I never felt that time was moving by and that I was, getting older until maybe a couple of years into having kids. I could all of a sudden just feel the days and the months and the years going by.
100%.
It's a weird thing.
Pleasant and unpleasant.
Yeah. Yeah. It's both at the same time. So this happened last time we had Chris on the show. It is such a rich conversation that we just can't fit it all into one episode. So in our next episode, we'll feature part 2 of this amazing chat with Chris Gethard. And in the meantime, do yourself a favor and click on the link in our episode notes. Check out the Lonely Dad Conversations on Scribd. Mark.
Adam?
Mark, quick recurring segment before we close out the episode.
It just so happens I have one.
Which one is it?
We have a very well-known and well-loved segment called "Did I Just Say That Out Loud?"
Hold on.
Sorry.
A well-known segment called
"Did I Just Say That Out Loud?"
Thank you.
But this is the sub segment
Okay.
of "Did I Just Say That Out Loud?"
Hold on. This is a sub-segment of...
This is a sub segment of "Did I Just Say That Out Loud?" And it's called "Did I Just Hear That Out Loud?"
You didn't put this into the world. You heard, presumably, one of your wife or one of the voice. Okay.
I heard my wife say this.
Okay.
And it was today, in fact. We were it is March and we were at the beach.
Okay.
Just gonna set the scene just a little bit. Here's what I heard out loud. She said hands in pockets were staring at the water, and she said, "They're gonna be miserable, but it's worth it for right now."
Because they were getting soaked.
Because they were, it's March. We were at the beach, and the boys were just like, they had like hiking shoes and socks and jeans and like puffy jackets because it was cold. And they were just running out into the water, like up to their knees.
Yeah.
And just kicking and splashing and having the best time. And for a little while, when it first started, my wife and I were like, we probably need to stop this.
Yep.
But they were over there.
Yep.
Having a good time. And we were way over here having a nice little time ourselves. And so we stopped worrying and we just let it be. But, 25 minutes later and they are soaking wet.
Oh,
and
yeah.
That just came out of my wife's mouth. And that was when we were like, maybe we need to sort of shut this down and get back into the car.
Did you have the moment later when they're in the car soaking wet and just miserable?
It never got quite as miserable as I anticipated it to get. But my one son in particular, his undies got a little wet.
Yeah.
And so we would let him take, we'd crank the heat and we let him take the pants and the socks and the shoes and stuff off and just be, pantless in the car ride on the way home. But my one son's underwear was wet and it was bothering the hell out of him. He couldn't stop complaining about it. Yeah, and he's like he's in his car seat and he's trying to reach back there and just like scratch.
Of course he is.
And pull and tug at it. And yeah, it was pretty funny. But, I don't know. There's that little piece of me that's like, I enjoying that a little bit. As annoying as it was, I was kind of enjoying it because, we said a couple of times, like you're not going to be super happy if you get very wet right now, but they didn't listen and, whatever.
That is that is the definition of Schadenfreude, right?
Schadenfreude. I think. Yeah.
We've had that same experience so many times. My girls, we go to the beach and it doesn't matter what the season is. They cannot not get soaked.
No. Got to go in the water.
Yeah, it's just a thing. And that Jamie, check it, huh?
That Jamie.
She's a good one.
She's a good egg, that Jamie.
She's a good mom. She's a good partner to you. Here, you didn't ask for my opinion.
Uh-huh.
But I think you should keep her around.
Let's compliment each other's wives really quick. This should be a new segment, actually. Wait, let's pause. Let's pause on this. We should actually make a new segment where we just compliment each other's wives. Just one compliment. It's like a little weird.
Yeah. Let's close it out.
I'll kick it off because I got it all right here, right off the dome, the old dome. Thanks for listening to Modern Dadhood. You can find us on such platforms as Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you listen. And wherever you listen, give us a rating, give us a review. I challenge you to tell a friend about the show. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Adam tells me we have a TikTok. I haven't seen it yet.
There's some controversy around TikTok.
Oh.
I might just detonate our TikTok page.
Well, find us on TikTok while you can.
Go to the website too, because every episode of Modern Dadhood can be found there. You can hit the shop button and buy yourself or a friend or a spouse a Modern Dadhood t-shirt or dad hoodie. Every order ships with a free sticker.
Mm-hmm.
And also there's a contact form. You can contact us or just email us at hey@moderndadhood.com.
Thank you to Casper Baby Pants and Spencer Albee for the music that you hear on Modern Dadhood. Thanks to Pete Morse at Red Vault Audio. That's redvaultaudio.com for he does the mixing and the fading and the turning and the dialing in of he does all of that stuff, and he makes us sound pretty, I don't know, velvety. I'd like to thank Chris Gethard for being a wonderful guest again.
Please remember that our next episode will feature part 2 of this chat about the lonely dad conversations. And in the meantime, definitely check it out on Scribd. Either read it or listen to the audiobook version.
It will not disappoint. And finally,
I don't want to screw this up, man.
I think you'll be all right.
Thank you for listening.